to get some penultimate answers to the big questions about 2025. Usually what we like to do is take the last 2 days of the year to reflect on the year we have just experienced from a Catholic perspective. And here to help us do that, we're going to run through the big Catholic stories. We're going to run through stories that the media should have covered if they thought like we think. We're going to talk about the person of the year. Maybe we'll talk about the Catholic person of the year, and then we'll get into what Catholics need to do in 2026 to make the world, to teach the world to sing or whatever. I don't know how to make the world a better place.
Buy the world a Coke.
Yes, that's right. Here to help us, that was Todd Aguilaro, the Director of Publishing here at Catholic Answers. Todd, welcome.
Hi, Si. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Why, thank you very much. That's right. And also with us, Edgar Lueno, the assistant to the hosts here.
Technically, I'm just the producer today and not assistant host.
Thanks, Edgar, for being here.
Mm-hmm.
Did you both, I just want to get your qualifications on this. Did you both live through the year 2025?
Barely.
You barely lived through it? I'm so sorry to hear that.
I spent more time awake in this year than I did in any other year of my life.
Yeah, this is the most awake you've ever been.
Yes.
Because of Emilio Maguire.
That's right.
Your new best friend.
Yeah.
What did I say, Emilio?
Emilio.
Oh, Emiliano Maguire. I beg your pardon. I got your child's name wrong. Okay, so there's impressions that come with years. Like I would say my impression of the year 2020, just for example, that was a bad year. At the end of the year, we were like, that was a terrible year. So I'd like to start with general impressions. Do either of you have any feelings about this year? Good year, bad year, indifferent? What do you think? Nobody got anything.
You know, they all kind of blur into one when you get older, Si.
That is true. So it's good in the sense that you're still here at the end of it.
Still here, made it through,
Uh-huh.
richly blessed and all that, but I haven't quite been able to reflect as to how I'd characterize it.
All right, but I'm going to say that's neutral then.
All right,
if you don't come right out with it was bad or it was good, then I'd say meh. It was a meh. What about you?
I would say it's a blend of both, but for me, in general, there's more positive than there is negative, even though there's a lot of negative in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually thought, given the years that we've had since, I don't know, let's go back to the year 2001. That was a bad year. If I just did the average year between then and now, I'd say this was a pretty good year. This was one of the best years we've had in the last 25, I thought.
That's fair.
I thought,
at least in the last 5.
Is last 5? Have they been?
I would say at least the last 5. This has probably been the best.
Now you're getting so specific. I don't know. Like 2020, I remember that. 2008, I remember really bad. I just feel like
I know. I graduated high school in 8th grade. Or 8th grade. Yeah,
You graduated
2008.
high school?
In 8th grade, yeah.
In 2008.
2008.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. It came out and there was no jobs.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's fun.
Well, anyways, okay. So here's what I thought I would do. What we like to do is poll our listeners each December to ask them, what did you think were the big stories of the year and all that? And I found a shortcut this year. I found a way around that. Everybody's getting replaced by AI, so I replaced our audience with an AI. I asked ChatGPT to do all the work this year. Part of that is because it was crazy busy around here, and I just didn't have time to get it out. Darren had a kid. Darren and Rena had their 6th kid, so he was out for a bit, and he's usually the organizational force in my life that makes me get the things done that I'm supposed to get done. So he not being here was a bummer for the poll and all that. But here I asked ChatGPT the top 5 Catholic stories of 2025. You guys ready to go through ChatGPT's view of the top 5 Catholic stories of 2025?
Hit us.
All right. Number 5. I'm actually going to switch the order of 4 and 5 because I don't want to start on a complete bummer. I realize Luke will be in there. Why are you starting on such a negative story? Here's a great positive, uplifting story. Pope Leo XIV met with King Charles III. There's a big story for you.
Yeah, it's a story that if you're into Catholic apologetics and its history, kind of pings you because we haven't had a king of England in a lot of our lifetime, so we've got a king now.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Man, many people lived and died without a king.
Yeah. And
right.
the king is according to the Church of England, the head of the church in England.
Yeah.
And so we have a historic animosity there, and yet they made nice. And so it almost makes you wonder: does that old conflict even matter anymore?
I wonder as well. Queen Elizabeth had the reputation, and I always liked her Christmas message, and I'll listen to Charles's Christmas message this year. I have not yet listened to it, but I always liked her Christmas message because she would talk about Jesus Christ, like in using the faith, using the faith terms around him and all that. And so I always liked that because I felt like Queen Elizabeth was a genuine Christian. I don't know about Charles. Charles, he doesn't make a public confession of Christianity as far as I can tell. So it's weird to me that you have almost a post-Christian leader of a Christian church in Charles. And maybe that's, in a certain sense, when religion doesn't matter anymore, religious conflicts don't matter anymore.
I don't know much about King Charles, but my experience of the Queen comes from the show The Crown, so that's all I really know, and that was the history for me. So what I note from that and bits and pieces of history that I've read, she really took her job as duty as queen as a very serious thing.
Yeah.
And she recognized what it means to be selfless and give herself in all ways that she can to her kingdom, I guess you would call it. Compare that to King Charles. I don't really know too much about him, but the way the show portrayed him doesn't look to be like a very virtuous human being.
Was this a Netflix TV show?
Yeah, it was.
Because Netflix, that slightly offends me.
Okay, but
that you
but
rely
I'm
on
telling
Netflix.
you. So I'm telling you this. I'm coming at it from a millennial perspective who doesn't know
that's
part
good.
of that history. But the parts that I found interesting and did my research on, he seems very different from his mom.
Oh, yeah,
and
definitely.
his approach to the crown.
Yes.
Well, he's a post-Christian leader of a church nominally, and he's a post-modern kind of ruler. He makes his preoccupations with climate change and a lot of the
Architecture. That's one thing I like about him. He's totally into architecture.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, he seems to be kind of an NGO head or something like that.
That's right. Yeah. Right. Not a faith leader.
No, and not really a ruler of a realm either. He's a figurehead. But I think that it's only a good thing, even if it was more as a head of state that the Pope met with him rather than as a religious leader.
Right.
I doubt they were talking about doctrinal differences in there.
But I don't think, like, even today, I don't know the law in England today. We're going to talk about England, Great Britain in general, a little bit more later when we talk about religious intolerance. But they're making the list this year. But I don't think Charles, say Charles had a conversion tomorrow and woke up and said, the Catholic Church is the true church. I need to be Catholic. I don't think he could be king anymore, could he? Wouldn't they tell him he's done as king?
I've heard that said about other nobles who converted. I don't recall their names right now, but
yeah,
I've heard it popularly said that put them out of the running for succession. Yeah.
But if he is the head of the Church of England, wouldn't that, and he says, I'm converting and I'm bringing the whole church with me, can he do that? Or is that just not on the table?
I think that's not on the table. I don't know. I mean, it's
because what would it take for the Church of England to reunite with the Catholic Church?
Well, whole pastors have done that very famously over the years.
Oh yeah, right. What was the famous deacon who did that? Oh, no, he became a deacon. Now it won't come to me because I'm trying to.
You're not talking about the one who died in the motorcycle accident? He never became Catholic.
I don't think so.
Oh, okay, it's somebody else.
Yeah, but we have seen that. We've seen pastors come in with, usually not with the whole flock, but sometimes with a good percentage of the flock will make that. And often I think that's rooted in study, that the pastor begins to study with his flock. And as they're studying, they begin to realize, oh, this Catholic thing has a compelling kind of argument, and it has it's drawing them. And so a lot of times when the congregation comes in with the pastor, it's because it's a shared study that they all did. And they're like, I think we might be Catholic. And in they come. And that's perfectly fine. You can do that. And usually bishops are quite solicitous of that.
I was at a conference last summer, and there was an Anglican clergyman there who, half jokingly, half lamentingly, said to me, sometimes it feels like we're just shepherding them until they become Catholic.
Really?
There's a kind of inevitability maybe to faithful high church, high doctrinal content Anglicans, that they kind of have an inevitable date with Rome. Sheldon Van Auken felt that way, if you recall.
Especially with Anglicanism, the high Anglicanism, it almost is like an arrow pointing you towards the Catholic Church. And there are many wonderful saintly Anglicans, and have been throughout the centuries, but they belong in the Catholic Church. It was a odd quirk of history that they even left the Catholic Church, and they belong in the Catholic Church.
Can I ask you guys for some speculation?
Yeah.
With the great schism happening within the Anglicans right now.
Is that right? Schism or schism? Which is it?
I'm not weighing in on this one.
Because you know which way the boss goes. Is that right? He gets mad at everybody who says schism. Go ahead.
With the great schism
Yes.
that's happening, what do you think is going to happen with the more high church Anglicans? Do you think there's going to
the schism within Anglicanism?
within Anglicanism?
Mostly in Africa, you're talking about, I think.
Well, with the election of this, what is it, the Archbishop of Canterbury?
Archbishop of Canterbury. A lot of people there does seem to be a breaking of communion in Anglicanism, similar to what happened in Methodism a few years ago, if I understand it correctly, which it does seem to break down around the response to the sexual revolution.
Yeah.
That frankly just seems to me, the sexual revolution was devastating to the Catholic Church, but it's terminal for some of the Protestant churches, especially some of the mainline Protestant churches. They just never came up with a unified response. I think that you help me out if you think I get this wrong, but I think John Paul II helped the Catholic Church respond to the sexual revolution with this kind of clarity, with some of the Veritatis in Splendor and some of the other encyclicals. Whether you would say any particular of his was right on the money or he was off, there was a general direction that we're not abandoning the traditional stuff. And that meant that in the Catholic Church, you either accepted it, what the Pope said, and went forward with the Church, or you left. So I think there was a kind of schism of just, there was a withering of people who really wanted the sexual revolution to revolutionize the Church, just didn't find a home in the Catholic Church in the 80s and 90s. And so the thing kind of muddled through without a split.
Well, I certainly agree about what John Paul II did with the theology of the body and love and responsibility and
yeah, thank you for helping me with the things.
Well, love and responsibility is my favorite of all his works, and it's a masterpiece. But I disagree with you that the dissenters to his teaching just went away. I mean, they certainly stuck around in the woodwork.
Yeah, but it does seem to me that, why did the Methodists split over sexual issues? Because I think if any fair analysis would say the Methodist Church would not have split were it not for the sexual issues. Because there's no authority there to say this is the definitive thing.
Well, with the Church of England, which we were talking about, you go back to Lambeth in, was it 1930?
Yeah.
And that, if you want to go to a watershed moment.
Terrible error.
Yes, and the rift that it opened has just widened. So when you ask Edgar, is this a schism or a schism, as I think Jimmy used to say?
Wow.
Yeah, I didn't mean to embarrass him, but he used to say schism. I think he's been corrected of that since.
Really? Yeah, that sounds like...
I mean, there are two letters after the S. You probably should say them in some way or another.
You have an argument. He's like, I'm not weighing in on this. And then when he weighs in, it looks like, I've been thinking about this for 20 years.
Couldn't hold it in any longer.
Dropped a bombshell.
But back to your point, Edgar, I don't think this is that S word. I think this is a long, slow train. I think it's just a long, steady decline. To quote a famous Anglo-Catholic, it's going out with it not with a bang but a whimper.
At the heart of it, though, is there's those who desire to stay faithful to Jesus through all the changes since the sexual revolution of the 20th century. They're building bridges with one another, and what I mean, it sounds judgmental to say want to stay faithful to Jesus, but Jesus is very clear on his sexual teaching. It's not really hard to figure out what the Bible teaches as far as sex goes. So, and to pretend otherwise is to pretend. That's what I think about it. It does seem to me that, okay, now you end up with people, a lot of Christians looking at each other going, well, who have kind of persevered with the traditional Christian teaching, with the teaching that goes back to Christ on sexuality, and they're looking at each other going, maybe we should all be in the same church. And I think that's happening. I'll let you comment on that if you want when we come back, and we'll continue with the major Catholic stories of 2025 right after this on Catholic Answers Live.
Catholic Answers Live.
Do you have a question but prefer to ask it privately? Catholic Questions can help. Go to CatholicQuestions.com to ask your question online, email us, drop us a letter, or give us a call. Longtime Catholic Answers Live apologist and author Jim Blackburn or another Catholic Questions apologist will be happy to assist you. Catholic Questions proudly supports Catholic Answers Live, so visit us at CatholicQuestions.com today. That's CatholicQuestions.com.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Magnificat. Published monthly, Magnificat features texts of daily Mass, prayers, articles, meditations, art commentaries, and more, in step with the liturgical rhythm of the Church, on the web at magnificat.com.
EWTN, Teaching the Truth.
Well, I don't think we're like the typical college students because we really hang out at our campus ministry and everything. It's amazing about how much more connected you feel. We share really cool articles from actually you guys, EWTN, and like what you were saying about evangelization. So that's really nice.
EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. We got a lot of stories to cover, and we're stuck on King Charles met Pope Leo XIV this year. We're doing the major Catholic stories as decided upon by me and my best friend. That's literally what it came down to. My best friend and I, we sat around and talked about this, and you know who my best friend is.
Croc?
Nope, not Grok. No, I'm ChatGPT, and I think I'm one of those people that like the one I start with is the one I'm going to finish with. Like I'm one of those
AI monogamist.
I'm an AI monogamist. Yeah, that's exactly it.
Have I introduced you to Gemini yet?
No, I've talked to Gemini. I that's okay. I don't look. Enough with the metaphor. Pope Leo, King Charles. Anything else that you want to say? Did you? What do you think of my idea that? Look, the sexual revolution is the number one issue that the church has faced over the last 100 years. And those who passed the test, so to speak, are looking at each other now going, I think maybe there's not as much that should divide us as we thought.
You people have called this the ecumenism of the trenches.
Okay.
And you see Protestants and Catholics and even interfaith on the sidewalk in the morning at the abortion clinic or working in defense of marriage. And these are all sexual areas. And bringing them together, and that kind of common moral cause thawing some of the iciness of faith differences.
Yeah, one hopes. One can hope. All right, here's another one, and I let ChatGPT talk me into this one. The Archdiocese of New York announced that it settled for $300 million clergy abuse claims. I think this is the second or maybe third settlement from the Archdiocese of New York. Most dioceses are on their second or third settlement. I just wanted to include this one at ChatGPT's suggestion because I think we're still suffering through this.
I haven't known a church that's not involved in scandal in my life. So
no.
What's the first one that really came out, I think, was a Boston Globe back in 2002.
Yeah.
So when I started paying attention to what was happening in the church, it was all of this. So this is all I really know. And it honestly, I know I share this sentiment with a lot of people my age, is that you lose a lot of hope in the church. Just all the constant payout money, and then the ministry appeals and all this. It's like this money's going to go to the diocese, and it's like, well, we kind of know where some of it's going, and it makes you not want to donate. I was like, well, I know where this is going for the crimes committed by certain people, and why do I have to participate in that? That's the initial knee-jerk reaction to those requests. So
it does. Go ahead.
Well, every one of these is a punch in the gut, and it fills you with sadness. Now, the thing to be saddest about, of course, in all of these stories is the physical and spiritual harm done to the victims of the abuse. Secondly, you got to say that it's the harm done to average Catholics whose faith is shaken and who become cynical or whatever. But we don't talk enough, or we don't talk as much about another kind of harm, and that's the squandering of the material wealth of the church. And that wealth was built up by generations of poor Catholics, of immigrant Catholics in this country, of people who gave from their poverty to buy land, to buy, to build church buildings, to create ministries. And all of their sacrifice and all of their far-seeing vision is just being trampled upon every time we write a check like this. So it also makes me mad.
I feel mad at it in this regard. It does seem to me that as much as both of you acknowledge the victims, and you very rightly should, the Catholic Church is not the world's primary sexual abuse locus. I mean, the billions and billions of dollars that have been sucked out of the church by people who will not look at the institutions they're a part of. The hypocrisy of it at this point is I mean, it's just, I don't even know how to describe the emotion of it. It's tiring, the hypocrisy of it. Far more people have been abused in the public schools of the state of New York than ever were. And now people hear that, and I know there's self-righteous people who go, "Well, are you downplaying?" No, you're being self-righteous. I'm clearly not downplaying anything. None of us have downplayed anything. The point is, this is a fetish now of the media and state officials, and it's your fetish. It's not my fetish. The church has admitted her wrong, has done everything she could to correct it, and from as long as there's been schools, kids have been safer in Catholic schools than in any other school. So stop lying to yourselves. This at this point, it's just.
I think that's an important arrow for a defender of the church to have in his quiver, to point out rates of abuse in the Scouts or public schools or any other institution where wicked adults have access to children. At the same time, the church has a higher standard. And I think it's a testament.
Is it 300 million higher? $1 billion higher?
Well,
I mean, how much higher is it? Like I'm not saying we don't have a higher standard. I think the church is living up to her standard in her apologies, in the way bishops have responded, bishops who are not guilty of these things, the way that she has settled these suits over and over and over again. I think we're living up to our standards now. I don't feel ashamed of that. I feel like there's a point at which this is just people who they happen to get a hammer in their hand and they're just going to keep swinging.
Well, the money's a big part of it. I mean, we live in California where a year or two ago you couldn't turn on any screen without seeing commercials from the sex abuse version of Ambulance Chasers saying, the statute of limitations has been extended by 5 years. And that's the state of California trying to bankrupt the church, and it's bankrupted many a diocese. So there's a lot of greed involved
twice
there too.
For some dioceses in California, twice the state of California. While the state of California, if you actually talked about liabilities, if we could really in our crystal ball see what are the liabilities that people actually have for sexual abuse, the state of California would be hundreds of times worse than the Catholic Church. But it doesn't open the statute of limitation against itself. It's an image has been created. People feel self-righteous about it, and are there victims? We've said yes 1 million times. There's victims in your family. There's victims in your Kiwanis club. There's victims in your school. Are there victims in the Catholic Church? Absolutely. Sexual abuse is endemic. It is part of the human condition. And at this point, I think it is just clear that states like New York and California, their intention is to bankrupt Catholic dioceses about every 10 years. And that's what they're going to do. That's the policy of these states, and it's just something that we're going to have to live with.
Well, the church is the rival to the state, so there's political philosophy behind this too.
I know a lot of these political leaders are people who we oppose because they're in favor of euthanasia and abortion and gay marriage and all these things that we oppose. So I think they're right to keep attacking us. If you look at it in a pure Machiavellian way, they're right.
And it's a stark reminder too, isn't it? It's a stark reminder to us, and it maybe it recalibrates our outlook on being in but not of the world. Maybe
I think
way.
that's a very good point. We'll leave that one there. The 3 top Catholic stories of the year coming up. See if you can guess what ChatGPT and I agreed were the top 3 Catholic stories of the year. ChatGPT, which by the way took about 6 months to figure out that Pope Leo was actually the Pope. Do you know that story?
I don't.
All right, I'll tell you when we come back on Catholic Answers Live. Why do Catholics pray to dead people, bow to statues, venerate relics? And where do we find any of this stuff in the Bible? In the delightful book, The Saints Pray for You, Dr. Carla Broussard convincingly defends the ancient Christian belief rooted in Scripture that the saints care for us, that they're our allies. Order your copy of The Saints Pray for You today at shop.catholic.com or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Why We're Catholic is the one book you can hand to anyone to invite them into or back to the Catholic faith. With more than 400,000 copies sold, Trent Horn's book has had a #1 ranking on Amazon.com for 5 years running. Now available in softcover, bulk cases, ebook, and on Audible. Find out what the excitement is all about. Order your copies of Why We're Catholic at shop.catholic.com or visit whywearecatholic.com.
We hope that one of the things that we communicate here at Catholic Answers Live is that our Catholic faith allows us to be fully serious about all the problems we encounter in the church and in the world, but it also lets us have light hearts and maybe even mix in a bit of fun, and that is exactly what our good friend Joe Heschmeyer does in his popular podcast, Shameless Popery. You should check it out at shamelessjoe.com. Joe's got a deep grasp of the faith, of morals, the teachings of the church, all that, but he's also got a witty conversational style. He entertains and he informs, but you will leave equipped to better answer the most common challenges, misconceptions, and questions about the Catholic faith. He's got insightful guests, he does on-air debates, and he takes a close look into all the things that you want to know about as a Catholic living today. You'll walk away knowledgeable and filled with joy. Look for Joe on his YouTube channel. Check him out at shamelessjoe.com or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like what you hear, become a patron. Welcome back, Catholic Answers Live. Okay, so this is the thing with ChatGPT. If like in July and August and September, you asked ChatGPT about Pope Leo, ChatGPT was not sure if Pope Leo was a real person or not, and would tell you all kinds of things like Francis is still the Pope, and then it would get confused and go, well, there does seem to be this other figure, but it would twist itself, because it seemed like it was trying to present it was trying to keep itself from hallucinating a fact, and somehow it was not integrating that Leo was the Pope. And so it was a state of a contest for a while.
It's a state of a contest.
It was a state of a contest AI for a while. But the definitive report on this was written in the Catholic News. It was a Catholic News Agency or Catholic Register, National Catholic Register. I think it was National Catholic Register published it. How ChatGPT just would not accept Leo as Pope. It would not accept Leo. All right, here's a big story, and you're going to be like, what? How is that a big story of 2025? Here's a big story, a big Catholic story. There weren't a lot of Catholic stories, by the way. I didn't think it was a big Catholic news year, except for of course, our #1 story, which everyone can guess what the #1 story is going to be. But it didn't seem like there was a ton of Catholic news. In the tradition of the dog that didn't bark, maybe, I'm not sure exactly how to categorize this one. Synod on Synodality. It ended in 2024, and now we are in the implementation phase. I would say the most remarkable thing about the Synod on Synodality is how little we have heard of it in 2025.
I had to go to ChatGPT to help me formulate an answer on this.
And what did ChatGPT say?
ChatGPT said, I don't know.
Really? Have you seen anything on Netflix about it? Or
Not yet. I think they're making a documentary about it. And how,
on the Synodality?
the ending doesn't have the final act doesn't have a big bang. Well, everybody talks about the synod on synodality. Depending on which circle you're in, you can either hate it or love it. I was kind of in the middle between those. I was like, I understand what they're trying to do, but I don't like what they're doing. And a lot of the groups that tend to be more heterodox are trying to introduce things into the church that'll never be introduced. But I did this on the Super Show a few weeks ago. Something that came out of the Synod on Synodality had nothing to do with America, at least on the surface. It was the document that came out on polygamy.
Was that a Synod product?
It was a Synod product.
Oh, fascinating.
And I was like, we don't need this. You're right. We, in general, don't need it here in the States, but they need it in Africa. And
in one of our states, we need it. All right, go ahead.
So I think this to me was like, okay, so there's good fruit that are not, it's not America-centric. It's not like American Catholic-centric. So
wait, the world does not revolve around us?
I just discovered that.
This
Can you believe
is
that?
I'm having trouble accepting this.
So I saw this document and I was like, I see zero purpose for this. Why are you guys wasting your time? And it turns out it's not. It turns out there's actually some Catholics in Africa that actually need to hear this because it's so ingrained into the culture, and now it's there for them. So.
It is funny the things that you don't think of as an American that come out of the Vatican, and you're like, what? What is that? I remember when years and years ago when the Charter on the Rights of the Family came out, and there were certain rights that were, if you were an American, you'd look at that and go, why are we even calling that a right of the family? And it had to do with China or countries that had one-child policy. When you thought outside of America, it became clear why they were signifying certain rights, like the right of the family to regulate its own size, the right of the parents to regulate the size of the family. That struck many people as like, that's a weird way to phrase that, but it had to do with China. They had to respond to China. So, yeah, getting out of the America-centric view, it's not going to be easy now that we got an American Pope, but has your life been improved by the Synod?
Well, I was struck by something that Edgar said. He said, I understand what they were trying to do. And that's a quote.
That's a direct quote.
Could you explain to the rest of us, please?
They were trying to listen. Were you not listening, Todd?
I wasn't listening hard enough.
They wanted to hear from the people, which I get, but I don't see the purpose. I understand what they were trying to do, but I don't see the purpose for it. I never saw what's the end goal if you're going to have groups of people who are going to say we want to see women priests and we want to see gay masses. It's like, it's never going to happen. Great, we're listening to you, but why?
It's funny you mention that because you see two polar sides on this. Those who are convinced that the whole synodal project is a stalking horse for introducing to the church all kinds of horrible heterodox changes. And then you have those who would probably welcome some of those changes, who are vexed and angry at how slowly it's all going and how they haven't been those things coming out, and seeing it all perhaps as a kind of false flag operation or a I'm out of metaphors here, so help me.
Oh God, hold on.
Just a kind of a bone being thrown to their camp to make them feel like their concerns are being heard. Well, the whole deaconesses thing that came down recently incensed a lot of the barely hanging on Catholic left that wants to see women admitted to holy orders, like for example in Germany.
But there, it does. I had the feeling, my sense of the synodality was it was not a means that could achieve the ends it was designed to achieve, and that endless listening sessions and all of this stuff, it couldn't get the church where it needed to go. And I haven't surrendered that. I wasn't like a church that listens and welcomes people from the margins and all of that is so good. I just didn't think a synod was the tool that could accomplish that. And I remain convinced of that. And I think we have not had a pope take seriously in the modern era the reform of the parish. And the parish is where the church happens. And we've got all these giant documents on every issue under the sun, but where is the Pope who's just going to say, look, the parish is struggling horribly around the world. We need a new image and model of how the parish works. We need to get this thing going. And it's, I mean, some of what the Synod was about getting rid of clericalism. Well, do that at the parish level. Fix the parish. I mean, why is the pastor of the parish running a parish without a finance council or a pastoral council, as they do in many places? Well, that's clericalism. And we need to have parishes that take seriously the idea that the people need to be in partnership with their priests way more than we have thought of in the modern era. Way more than we moved out into the suburbs and nobody changed the model of the parish. So I feel like what Pope Francis wanted was a church that's listening and goes out to the margins and welcomes and has hospitality and all that. I don't think a synod is the way you get that. I think talk seriously about what's going on at the parish level, why our parish is failing to do what they're there to do, and let's get going. Let's go. Let's dadgummit.
Cypher Pope.
To quote Philip Rivers, dadgummit, let's go. So I think it missed the mark. I think the whole thing missed the mark. And I think if synodality is about all these things that Francis said it was about, I just think he chose the wrong tool.
I've worked for 2 diocesan chanceries in my life, and I could say one thing I learned from working for both of them is that in a diocesan setting, probably as in a government setting or in education, process is super important.
Yeah.
And it's almost as if outcome in this case is less important than simply kind of journeying together and doing it. And you get the feeling you've accomplished something simply by having walked along, even if you don't arrive.
Right. Yeah. That's that's called bureaucracy, isn't it?
Well, yeah.
I mean, like that's when the bureaucracy takes over. Process becomes more important than progress, which is I think always the free market argument, isn't it? That like if you leave it up to government, say, to build a rocket, it just won't do it as well as Elon Musk or one of these billionaires.
Yeah, it'll come up with 9 committees to design a tail fin.
Right, because of bureaucracy,
Mm-hmm.
because bureaucracy will get in the way. All right, well, moving on. You know what? Let's take a break, and then we'll do the top 2. We'll do the top 2 news stories, Catholic news stories of 2025, according to, well, the experts, me and ChatGPT, right after this.
There's only one Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects home buyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
One of the biggest mistakes a Christian can make is to try to do good without God's help. St. Therese said, "When we trust only ourselves and not God, our soul becomes incapable of virtue." Her remedy? Works of charity. And the greatest work of charity is to share the gospel. At St. Paul Street Evangelization, a Catholic nonprofit, we encourage you to share the gospel with someone who doesn't know Jesus. Catholic Answers is supported in part by St. Paul Street Evangelization, streetevangelization.com.
EWTN, Teaching the Truth.
I just wanted to thank the station for being there on the radio for all of us Catholics. We're all trying to learn something new every day about ourselves and about the world we live in and the people that we interact with. Thank you for taking my question. I appreciate your willingness to be on the radio these days.
EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.
Welcome back, Catholic Answers Live. I don't like to reveal what goes on behind the scenes, but Edgar thinks Todd's being too irenic. Edgar wants you to throw more flames.
You know, it's a little bit like that story of St. Therese who hated one of her fellow Carmelites so much that she tried extra hard to be nice to her.
Yeah.
And they had to break them up because they got too cliquish. They were.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you don't know that story.
I didn't know it got that far.
Yes.
Therese.
So sometimes I'm too irenic because I'm trying so hard to be irenic.
I think Edgar felt. Now I don't want to judge what you were saying, but
Go ahead.
I think you felt Todd would be more negative about the synod on synodality. I think
No, not
you were
necessarily.
looking for don't think you
No. I want him to be a realist about this synodality.
I have a hotter take primed right now that ChatGPT helped me come up with. So
Okay, what did ChatGPT help you come up with on the synodality?
No, not on the synod. On one of the future topics we're going to.
Oh, really?
About, yeah.
Okay.
All right. It's getting juicy. I like
that's,
it.
You can always cover yourself in what ChatGPT told me to say, and then just drop a bomb. Catholic story number 2. I'm not sure if I picked right on this. It should have been Matt Fradd went to the Daily Wire, but I picked Pope Leo went to Turkey and Lebanon.
That's massive.
And came home alive. What? That's not funny to you?
That he came home alive?
Yeah.
No, I'm very grateful. Why would you joke about such a thing, Cy?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize you were going to be. It was Scold Todd that came in here today. No, the most interesting thing about this whole thing about Pope Leo going to Turkey and Lebanon, and God bless him for going. There used to be the heartland of Christianity used to be Turkey. Are we all aware of that? Oh, I wonder what happened. I'll have to go back and look at the history books, try to see if I can remember what happened. So Pope Leo went into the Blue Mosque, not the Hagia Sophia. I pronounce the H. Is that wrong? The Hagia Sophia?
Well,
There's
it's a breathing mark in Greek, I think, right? Hagi, the little cedilla over the H or the A.
I knew he would know. So am I supposed to say it or not? Am I supposed to say Hagia or Hagia Sophia?
I say Hagia.
Hagia Sophia. He didn't go there. He went to the Blue Mosque, which was, what's the difference between not stolen and the?
That was funny, Cy.
That was.
I affirm it.
But he didn't pray at the Blue Mosque, and recent popes had prayed in mosques. And then when he got back, somebody said to him, why didn't you pray at the Blue Mosque? Because there's nothing wrong. You can pray anywhere. As a matter of fact, you're supposed to pray everywhere. There's not like a rule. You can't pray here. You can't pray there. But he said a very odd thing, I thought. At least I'm not exactly sure what to make of it. He said, I prefer to pray in Christian churches.
That's
Does that
not a
strike
strange
you as
thing
odd?
to me. Why would that be odd?
Well, go ahead. Tell me what you
don't prefer to pray inside of a church?
Well, no. I suppose it struck me as something a modern pope might not say. In that, I guess it's no. It's of course. I mean, I prefer to pray in a Catholic church because I know Christ is there.
Yes.
But
it's a bit uncomfortable when you're in a house of prayer.
Yeah.
For something that's not your faith. Many moons ago, I dated an Indian girl, and she was Sikh. And I was like, well, it was Sunday. I was like, well, I want to take you to church. And she said, only if you come to the temple with me. I'm like, okay. Very awkward, very weird, specifically because when you walk in there, there's a section for women and a section for men. And I sat there, and it's like...
And you were like, best church ever. But no, not really.
But, you go in there, and she goes her way and I go my way, and I'm just kind of sitting there and everybody's looking at me, and like I feel very awkward even praying to my God here. This is a little strange. I don't know what to do.
Plus they all had knives.
They all had knives. The guru was up front kind of like giving me the eye, and it's like, what are you doing here? Clearly I didn't fit in. She told me I looked Indian with because you got to put men have to cover their head in this thing, so I put on the bandana, but I was wearing a suit. And everybody's there in like jeans and a t-shirt and just sitting in their temple. And I am in a suit, barefoot, and this orange bandana on me. It's like, I kind of don't feel comfortable right now, and I don't want to pray.
I don't feel comfortable with that mental image of you, to be honest with you.
Actually, I want to see a photo of this. I would love to see a photo of this. Can we put it in the thumbnail for this?
I can't say I blame the Pope not wanting to pray there.
I loved how wonderfully American Pope Leo's answer was, as it was reported when is it an imam? Who was
the imam? Yeah, that was given him a tour. Yeah,
and asked him if he wanted to pray, and his reported quoted response was, "That's okay."
He said, "That's okay."
He said, "That's okay," which is so American and so Midwest. I thought that was beautiful.
That is very American. That's okay.
No, I'm good.
No, I think what he's making a distinction there, and it seems to me. I mean, and maybe he's not teaching anything. Maybe that's just how he is. But it seems to me that because there's nothing wrong with praying. There's nothing theologically wrong with praying wherever you are. The fact that he didn't, and then the fact that he said, I prefer to pray in a Christian church, it suggests to me that he has a little bit of an agenda there, which is to refocus people on the uniqueness of Christianity, to not let it just, what's the word, syncretize with other religions.
Yeah, I think that does suggest that. He made other comments at other points in his visit that kind of balanced that out some, though.
We're more syncretist, or
well, I'm not going to say I want
No,
as far as say syncretist, but
yeah.
he implicitly scolded Christians in Europe and North America and told us to be less fearful of Islam. And he made a somewhat flowery speech. I actually had ChatGPT find the quote for me. He said, "Dear friends, in your presence here today, in this extraordinary place where minarets and bell towers stand side by side, yet both soar toward the heavens, testifies to the enduring faith of this land and the persistent dedication of its people to the one God." So that was a very unifying message. I'm not going to say syncretistic.
No, it's not, right. But I see what you're saying.
And I recognize that in places where Muslims and Christians live side by side, we have to use very diplomatic language. And there's not only a spiritual aim, there's a socio-political aim. You want to mollify people and soothe tempers and all that sort of thing. But certainly there seems to be a kind of whiff of universalism there, or not of universalism, of indifferentism there, perhaps a little bit.
Okay, which would, yeah, I see what you're saying.
The bell tower and the minaret, both praising God, kind of side by side in this beautiful place where we've learned to live as one and realize we just have the one God and kind of maybe like one religion, but maybe not. That's the...
So, I have to say the framing of being afraid of Muslims without saying, things, I mean, maybe it's not right for him to say these other things, but, millions of Christians have left Muslim countries in the last century. Why? Why did that? Maybe just raise that question. Maybe raise the question about why is there no Christian church in Saudi Arabia? But
millions of Muslims have moved into Europe and Australia, right? So just a little while ago, we had that awful shooting on Bondi Beach. And so there's...
Seems a little pat just to say, why are you afraid of Muslims? I mean,
yes, or don't be less fearful. I mean, there's a very material reason, historically and in the present, for Christendom to fear certainly the militancy of Islam, and to fear the cultural impact of large-scale immigration. And Pope Benedict warned about this, and other good churchmen have warned about this. Cardinal Mueller, to this day, talks about it. The lack of assimilation into Western Christian culture, or not enough of it.
The active opposition to Western Christian, it's not just like there's an actual, at least from what I hear in places like London, there is a determination not to assimilate. There is an expectation of victory.
And also Dearborn, Michigan now, and that whole area. It's there. It's happening in the States too, not just in London and Australia.
Right, and I don't doubt that 90% of the Muslim people on this earth are exactly what everybody always says Muslims are: peaceful, good, generous, family people, and all of that. But there's more than 1 billion Muslims on the earth. 10% jihadis is really bad, and I don't like to fail to talk about the jihadis, to fail to talk about what has happened with Wahhabism and the rise of violent Islam. What are we doing? Why do we have to pretend like that's not happening?
That 10% of jihadis are morally supported by perhaps 50% of the peaceful ones who may not commit any acts of violence themselves. But we see this. You mentioned London, Scandinavia, France, where Muslim population... Well, Nigeria, of course, is this whole other thing.
Okay,
but
fair enough.
In Christendom, and in European Christendom, where you have these whole sections of cities that have been called no-go zones, it's become a...
Is that real? I never know if that's real. Like, is that real?
It gets poo-pooed by revisionists.
Okay, because I haven't been there, so I don't know. But
I read a great phrase that's replacing it, something like negotiated law enforcement, where the police know they leave certain segments of London or Paris or Stockholm alone because the majority Muslim population, most of them not people who are going to shoot you, but still are maybe fellow travelers to a degree, they've got their own set of laws. They've got their own way of dealing with crime, with morals in their locations.
But this attitude is going to lead to the overthrow of governments in Europe. I mean, their own people are going to throw them out if they continue this. Don't you think? I mean, like we hear about Geert Wilders, and who I think has been less than successful as a leader. But the message, I think, I just think there's a certain kind of lying to ourselves about what Wahhabism is, and the fact that it's persistent and determined and is thinking in terms of centuries and is violent. That if there was a political ideology, not a religious ideology, but just a pure political ideology that had the same strategic patience and willingness to use violence, we'd go, oh my gosh, this is a horrible threat. But because it's religious, we act like, well, you can't say anything about it.
Well, what does that sound like? A ideology that thinks in centuries, that is capable of using violence, that slowly subverts the thinking of a place. Does that remind you of another ideology? I think it sounds very much like Marxism. And in fact, we just ran an excellent article by a convert from Islam on Catholic.com about the affinities between Islamism as an ideology and communism. And it's really eye-opening.
I'm going to have to read that. I'm sorry that I missed that one.
Oh, it's excellent.
But I will read that. That's on, what would the website be I would go to read that?
www.catholic.com.
Catholic.com.
You missed
Does he
one
have to
W.
say the WW part? Does that
Well,
WWW.
the fact that you said
Great.
WW and you missed the third one, so you
that
messed
makes it
that
even
part.
better. That makes it even
And you didn't
better.
even have to say it in the first place.
Can we fix that in post? Can we throw another W in there?
Bender, do your magic.
I do think, however, popes visiting places like Turkey and Lebanon, especially Lebanon, which has a huge Christian population, it's important for them to make these visits, and I'm glad that Pope Leo did it.
Can we shift to the other part of his visit there? The visit
to Nicaea.
To Nicaea.
Please say something about that.
1,700 years later, they met at the location of the Council of Nicaea, and they prayed the Nicene I can't say it. How do you say it?
Constantinopolitan
Creed.
Constantinopolitan.
The Nicene Creed. They both prayed the Nicene Creed together. And I don't know. I know that
You're talking about, but when you say both, Catholics and Orthodox together.
So the Patriarch Bartholomew the First, I believe, is it? Or Bartholomew.
It's my favorite Bartholomew.
And Pope Leo together prayed the Nicene Creed together. And that, even though we are not fully unified, we both still have the sacraments, and of course there's differences there that people are going to argue. And Ortho Bros Online hated the fact that that Pope Leo was there praying with Bartholomew. I think it was a great moment.
It's beautiful, though. I mean, 1,700 years to be standing on the very place where the creed that has held the church together, and even now holds the church together. It's beautiful to think about that. It's them standing in the ruins of that basilica. Well, why is it ruins again? I don't. Oh, I'm sorry. That is beautiful. Are you a pro, or are you in favor or against the Nicene Creed? I just wanted to know where you come down.
The creed itself. Do you know I'm an editor, so I'd probably change a few things here and there, but by and large, it's okay.
Wait. What might you change?
There's a few comma splices in there and a few passive constructions, but that's okay.
All right. Well, I wonder why the passive constructions. Were they avoiding conflict on something? Because usually you're avoiding conflict.
Could have just been a bad translator. I don't know.
It could be. It could be. All right. We didn't get to the number one story, and thank goodness, because I needed to tease to keep you for the next few minutes. We're going to take a very quick break shortly, and then we will come back with the number one Catholic news story of 2025. We will discuss it in depth. If you can guess what it is between now and the time we come back, the number one Catholic news story of the year, you are average, because everyone should be able to guess what there should be absolutely no surprise at this. If you cannot guess it, you have a problem. Something's wrong. You have not been paying attention in 2025. Maybe, perhaps, you were away and no one has informed you, but we'll talk about that big story with the director of publishing here at Catholic Answers, Todd Aguilaro, and with the assistant to the host, Edgar Lueno, right after this on Catholic Answers Live. Welcome back, Catholic Answers Live. All right, we're getting to we're doing our year, and we do 2 years. No, we don't do 2 years in review. We do the year in review twice. We do the penultimate year in review, where we talk about some stories that maybe we'll talk about tomorrow as well, and then we do the ultimate year in review. So we spend 2 days. We used to divide it up more neatly between, we do secular stories one day and church stories the other day, and that's just not as much fun. So we're just doing a couple of year in review shows. They won't overlap perfectly, but here with me is Edgar. How do you say your last name?
Lujano.
Lujano. Okay. All right.
If you want to be more...
Have I been pronouncing it wrong? Edgar Lujano?
Yeah. Actually, if you want to be more specific, it's actually Edgar Lujano.
Okay. Edgardo Lujano.
Specific or pretentious, which is...
If I'm in Mexico, correct. If I'm in the States, pretentious.
All right. So I won't mess with people's names. Also with us is Todd Golden Garlic, the head of publishing here at Catholic Answers. Welcome.
Like a head of garlic.
Oh, wouldn't that be a great job? There are people in this state who probably have the job title head of garlic, because up there in...
Garlic Czar.
Yeah, the Garlic Czar, because they have the Garlic Festival.
In Gilroy.
Gilroy Garlic Festival.
Hey, I grew up near Gilroy.
Have you ever been to the Garlic Festival?
I've never been to the Garlic Festival. Nope.
It looks like fun. Garlic, man.
The town I grew up in, we did the Almond Blossom Festival.
Oh, that's very nice.
Yeah.
They got strawberry festivals up there. Everybody's got some kind of thing.
Stockton has the Asparagus Festival. Just do not go there at night because you will get shot.
Well, you've really talked me out. I don't think I'm going during the day even now. Like if I. All right, so we're here to Golden Garlic. By the way, I apologize that I called you Todd Golden Garlic, but it's because
that's what my last name means, Si.
Aglio-olio.
Yes.
And so when I have pasta aglio olio, that means garlic with oil.
Correct.
Is that what that means? Oh, okay. All right. I gotta remember aglio.
Come from a long line of Sicilian garlic farmers.
Do you really?
Well,
are you kidding?
In the Low Country.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
All right. I used to have a Sicilian friend. She was a nun, and I called her Italian one time, and she goes, "I'm not Italian. I'm Sicilian." Mm-hmm. Is that a common thing for people to say?
Oh, absolutely.
Really?
And both Sicilians say that about themselves, and the rest of Italy, which doesn't care for Sicily very much,
also
says the same thing. Yeah. So we agree on that one thing.
Oh man. All right, the number one story of the year. We've gone through 4 of the biggest stories of the year. The Archdiocese of New York settling for $300 million. Pope Leo XIV meeting with King Charles III. The Synod and Synodality. Pope Leo XIV heading to Turkey and Lebanon. Do either of you have a guess? Would you like to guess what the number one Catholic story of the year is? I know that your guess will include the fact that you have it on your notes right there in front of you, but I just thought play theater of the mind here with me. Guess, what's the number one Catholic story of the year? Either of you?
That the Pope is a White Sox fan.
Nice.
Wow, well done. How about you? What did you think was the number one?
Yeah, like you said, it was a slow church year. It really was. I was scraping the bottom of my brain, I think, of these things.
It wasn't, we didn't have tons and tons of news, although we had the biggest thing that can happen in the Catholic Church. Yeah. Well, the second biggest thing that can happen. I think it's going to be big news when Jesus comes again. I think that'll top our list that year. I'm not doing the show, though. I'm not doing the show.
We better all be in the chapel. Just there.
It's not just the result of that big thing; it's the entire process. Speaking of process, again, the conclave and the coverage of it, and
right, it's a whole big deal. Pope Francis celebrates Easter Mass, and then the next morning, I got a text from Chris Check that said, "R.I.P. Pope Francis." I don't know how you all. Chris knows the news before anybody I know. I don't know how he does it, but that was kind of. I was like,
That's the red phone in his office, I think.
Is that what it is? So it was sudden, but not sudden. I don't know how to describe it. The death of Pope Francis.
Well, when you would look at Pope Francis, you could tell
knew he was coming near.
Yeah, it was getting close.
But because I think it was because the Easter Mass. You didn't expect like the next morning to wake up and, you would expect at least a few days in bed or something. But he tied his boots on, doing the job right up to the end. And then we got pure panic, I guess we could call it. It was interesting to watch the Catholic reaction because I think there was a feeling during the Pope Francis pontificate of division in the church. I felt it. I don't.
Yeah.
You're looking at me like I'm crazy. Did you not feel this? That
I'm looking at you with intent, interest, as every
Really?
word that you say is gold.
It just felt like which side is going to win the conclave. That's the way I felt as a Catholic. That was the direction most of the commentary was going.
It very much felt like voting for American politics. Which way is the church going to head? Is it going to be more conservative or liberal from the American perspective?
That's what.
Yeah.
You have no comment on
Well,
this.
so you saw there were whole websites dedicated to handicapping the thing and to not just handicapping the odds of what was going to happen, but how to judge each cardinal.
Yeah, well, you'll know if you won.
Yeah, exactly.
If it's these 5 cardinals. That's how the reporting looked to me. Like you look on some websites and we will have won if it's any of these 5 guys. We'll have lost if it's any of these 5 guys.
Yeah, there's pros and cons, and well, he said this, but he also wrote this, or he came from this. Someone was the one who facilitated his rise in the church, or whatever it happened to be.
Remarkably unguarded statements from some of the cardinals before the conclave, including one saying that it was idiotic. Remember the one, the Jesuit, the cardinal with the comments about Africa? He was like, how... You don't remember the negative comments about African? I'll look it up.
Well, but not in the context of the conclave?
Yeah, before the conclave.
There was one, was it Casper who said that...
Not Casper, no.
Africans don't matter. I thought that was well before. So there may have been another comment to that effect.
I do remember that. Yeah, that was way before the.
There was
conclave.
a German cardinal who threw shade at the Africans in that way a while back.
Oh, that was a long time ago, though.
Yeah.
No, but this was Michael Zerny, Canadian Cardinal Michael Zerny.
Okay.
He said it's so stupid to be pushing Africans. For the and I have to say, I was kind of excited about a couple of the African cardinals, and I just think it would be really good to have an African at the head of the church, and because there's this incredible youth and vitality in the African church. It's obviously the only continent where we're gaining, not losing members. And I feel like it would be a thumb in the eye of all the people who continue with the lie that the Catholic Church is somehow a white colonialist church, which is not the case and has never been the case. I wanted that thumb in the eye. But then when Zerny was like, look, when you're asking for an African cardinal, what you're really doing is saying, I want a conservative. And it was very dismissive of the Africans, that they're like, I found it ugly myself, and
that's astounding. That's that's verbatim what he said.
Tone deaf is that?
Because
that is.
I mean, if you wanted to put it in partisan terms, it's almost as if to say you couldn't possibly want someone from that part of the world or someone with that skin color.
Yeah.
This is about your ideology, not your love of universal Catholicism or something like that.
He said he becomes agitated when people say it is time for an American, African, or South Islander Pope. I think that is so stupid. It's time for the successor of Peter. The priority said it is evangelization. I don't know where the African quote comes. So yes, I think it might. I can't find it. I can't find the quote. There was the money quote was about this, how dumb it was to be talking about Africans.
Well, we just had a South American Pope, even if he himself...
Oh, here it is. Certainly. That is why it is so stupid to say things like Africa's time has come. That was the quote.
So stupid.
I didn't like that. That's a cardinal of the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
Before the speaking like that before the conclave.
That's not very becoming language, certainly.
No, I don't think so. Anyways, I interrupted you because I found my
Oh
quote.
well, if we're going to be talking about checking. This sounds very crass or cynical, but if maybe this was the context in which he was responding to this, and if so, maybe he deserves more credit. But checking certain regional or ethnic boxes.
Yeah.
And that we had kind of done that with Francis, who was from Argentina, though he was of Italian descent, recent Italian descent. So he was not himself ethnically South American, but nonetheless, it was kind of a box. Just like having a new American Pope is checking, the first American Pope is checking a box. So perhaps he was being scornful of thinking about electing popes with that in mind, in which case one could agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, that was a very charitable reading. I'm so tired of your charity today. I'm so tired of it. It's horrible.
When did I start?
All right, and then the day came and out onto the loggia. I don't know the word loggia is very rarely used. It's almost always associated with the election of the Pope. When do you ever see the word loggia used these days? It's just to tell you're talking about the Pope. So out onto the loggia steps Cardinal Robert Prevost, an American cardinal who shocked the world by being elected and taking the name Pope Leo. I'll tell you what, I'm going to leave that. We'll talk about what that moment was like and what the subsequent months have been like. The biggest news story of the year, the death of Pope Francis and the election of Pope Leo. We'll take a quick break and we'll get these guys' take on what they felt that day when Leo came out and what the subsequent months have told us about the state of the church and the state of the papacy. Right after this on Catholic Answers Live.
Your questions, Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
How should we pray? The disciples asked our Lord that question, and he gave them the Our Father, or the Lord's Prayer. But he also gave them the liturgy, which is the most privileged form of prayer in the Catholic tradition, especially the holy sacrifice of the Mass. We can pray with the whole Church in the liturgy of the hours or the divine office, and we should also pray in our own private room, our secret chamber, as Jesus says, and then our Father who sees us in secret will reward us.
All right, we've worked our way through the big news stories. We've got a lot more to do. We're going to get onto the stories that should have been covered more if Catholics ran the media. But with the number one Catholic news story, I don't think there's much dispute on this, was the death of Pope Francis and the election of Pope Leo XIV. Out he comes onto the loggia, and you said to yourself, I know that guy, right, Todd?
Well, I had been reading the handicap form, so his name was familiar to me.
It was.
Can I tell you my experience? We were sitting in the library waiting for him to come out, and when they announced the name, I didn't know anything about him. I heard Robert Francis, and I was like, oh, the only Robert that came to mind is Sarah or however she pronounces it. So that's initially what came to mind, and then when they said Prevost, all I heard was Todd say, Prevost. Really? Prevost? And I looked at him, I was like, what does that mean? What does that mean? And he just literally stood up and he's like, Prevost, and he just walked away. I'm like, what does that mean? I have no idea.
Well, I think we all didn't know what it meant.
I did that for a reason, because we immediately had to go create an article about him and put it on Catholic.com.
You freaked me out, Todd.
Prevost, I prepared for everybody, but not the American.
I was surprised.
We all were. All right. In this, but when he appeared. This for probably was bigger news than it's ever been. Wearing the mozzetta, that was somehow a sign to all of us. Looking back on it, I'm really glad he wore the mozzetta, and I'm glad of it for this reason. I think Pope Francis was a disruptor pope. It was a different kind of papacy, and I do think Francis coming out on the first day without the mozzetta was making a certain kind of statement about his papacy. And it seemed to me that if now I'm looking back on it. At the time, I didn't have any of this process. But I think if Leo had come out in the same garb as Francis, it would have treated that as like a permanent change to the papacy, rather than treating that as that's the message Francis wanted to give, and letting that be Francis's message. And I'm just going to go back to the usual way we do it.
I think it was more than not signaling that he was seeking continuity in that kind of forced simplicity of dress and speech.
Yeah.
But that he was putting a cap not just on Francis's style, which you could debate and you could find virtues in, but in his not infrequent antagonism toward, it was one of his pet bête noirs, I think, that he...
towards more traditionalists.
More traditional clerical dress.
Oh, that's right, because he used to say things about lace, and he was always picking on clerical dress.
He was, and he always saw in those, especially the younger clergy who favored that kind of dress, he always saw in them, it seemed, the worst motives. And I think Leo made peace in that moment with that controversy.
Well, I wonder if they're one is American, one is Argentine. I wonder. I have no idea what that clerical dress means in Argentina. Maybe that it has associations that it doesn't have for an American. But I see what you're saying. That Leo was kind of coming out saying, "We'll dress like priests."
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
I think the one thing that stood out to me is that he didn't speak English that night.
Really? Did that bother you, or did it just stand out?
It stood out. It's like, he's an American. We have an American Pope. It's like, but no English whatsoever to that day. I think to me that was actually a really good thing, thinking back on it, because you're not sending a signal to the Americans. All right, we got it.
We won.
We got it.
Well, he's an American, but he was very cosmopolitan, international, equatorial kind of American.
I remember when Pope Francis was elected, I was watching a bunch of news stuff, and there was people in Argentina saying, "Yeah, we have Messi, and now we have the Pope." And it's like, that's not what I wanted to see from an American. I didn't want an American Pope. To me, I never wanted to see an American Pope, because you just never know which way an American's going to go. And we already have a certain, stereotype out in the world of what an American is. And if it was going to be an American that doesn't hold Catholic values or tend to lean more left, I guess, I didn't want that to be another vision of this is what America produces. So I was very hesitant at first. And the more he came out and, the way he holds himself is very different from Pope Francis. And truly a man who understands the throne that he sits on as the prime minister of the church. He understands what his duty is and why he's there, more than, unfortunately, Pope Francis, I would say. And the other thing is I felt like a fog kind of cleared after the papacy of Pope Francis, because his papacy was very different compared to the other successors like Benedict and John Paul II. And now with Pope Leo, there seems to be at least more clarity in when he speaks. So he
speaks a lot less.
He does.
That's the thing I like. It does strike me though that that competitive feeling that people had before of which kind of pope are we going to get, I don't think Leo has definitively answered the question. And I think that's actually a kind of a genius move for your first 6 months or however long he's been in, maybe 7 months now.
When Americans said, from all kinds of political persuasions, said, "That's our guy," that's when you're like, okay, this is a good thing. You don't really know where he falls, because the conservatives were saying, "This is our guy." The liberals were saying, "This is our guy." It's like, all right, I kind of like this. I don't like the fact that he's blatantly sitting on one camp or the other.
Yeah, like I wouldn't be surprised 10 years from now we look back on it and go, wow, that's a wild liberalizing pope that we got. Or 10 years from now I look back on it and go, wow, that was kind of a traditionalist pope that we got. I don't know which thing we have right now, and I'm saying that's a good, not a bad thing.
Well, best case, his relative silence and his relative inaction are studied, and they're meant not only to, give him time to grow into his office and build the relationships he needs and all that sort of thing, but also to just slow the pace of change. It wasn't even as much as any individual thing that Francis did. It was the rate and the extremity of some of the things that he did that caused tremors within the church. So I think,
kind of impatience in Francis to see things done.
And so that the opposite virtue that Leo has been expressing and been kind of radiating has had a soothing effect on the church, whatever else he may go on to do.
Well, I've seen him say things that really ticked off my right-wing conservative friends, and I've seen him say things that really ticked off my left-wing liberal friends. And so it doesn't seem to me that he's just totally avoiding controversy. It does. I think that your idea of the rate is really right on the money. That sometimes you see he say a little something here, and you'll go, I don't know, or but he's just not hitting you every day with some new locution that you have to decode.
The way he is, or maybe dealing with Traditionis Custodes, with the reporting that he has communicated to the bishops of England and Wales that they may apply for unlimited renewals of permission to have the old Mass. He could have come and put his stamp on Traditionis and kind of shut that down. He could have come in and very visibly stomped on what Francis did.
Yeah, he could have,
and opposed it, and in ways that would have called continuity into question. But he's been very low key about the whole thing, and I think that's a case study in the approach that seems to be emerging from this papacy.
Yeah, but I wonder what you would think of this. I don't take that to be a sign that he's some kind of mamby. No, you're supposed to be namby-pamby, right? Not mamby-pamby.
I think they both work.
Okay, I don't think that's what we're seeing. I think it's actually just tremendous prudence.
Yes.
I think he's a prudent person. Would you? Yeah. You won't
Certainly
fight
not that he's namby-pamby or any other kind of pamby, but that he's.
How many kinds of pamby are there?
Well,
I don't actually know.
You got namby and mamby. We've already established.
Do you know any other kinds of pamby?
I've never even heard of this term.
I don't know. He's not. He doesn't seem to me to be a weak or vacillating person. He just seems to be prudent to me.
Yeah, I'm on board with that.
I
like
feel
that.
hopeful about that.
Yeah.
I mean, that part does give me hope. I don't know. That part does give me hope. I don't think he's crushing anybody. It doesn't seem to be going around crushing anybody. And I think the temptation for somebody to come in and just start knocking heads because someone's not on your team, I think would be overwhelming for some of these guys. But for him, he doesn't seem to have that. He doesn't seem to have the need to do that. He seems to have faith in the church, in the faith in Jesus, and he's allowing time to do a little bit of work here.
It also seems natural. He seems to have a mild temperament just by birth.
Yeah.
So that suits his approach.
All right. I'll tell you what, that's the number one story of the year. We come to the jury's still out on the Pope, and the Pope seems to want the jury to still be out on him. He doesn't. And so we'll leave that there. Next year we'll come back to you and tell you how horrible he is, or something. I don't know. But so far so good, Leo. I would like to say one other thing about him. I was very touched by the way he talked about peace when he came out about the peace of Christ. And I think he's very sincere in that. And I do read into that. I do think he was very well prepared in his first statement. Popes usually speak somewhat extemporaneously. He spoke with notes. He had written down what he wanted to say. And his emphasis on the peace of Christ, I think, is if that continues to be a theme of his papacy, the amount of hurt and unrest, confusion, and total lack of peace in the world, I think he could be a real balm to the world if that goes on, and I hope he is.
Your mouth to God's ear side.
All right, on we go. So now we're going to talk about stories that would have gotten more reporting if Catholics ran the media, if Todd ran the media. He has to run out of the room when the Pope is elected to go get something to press. We
had to let people know what happened.
No one would have known.
ChatGPT didn't know.
If Catholic Answers hadn't gotten the story out, who would have known? So what ChatGPT, my best friend and I did working together, was we came up with the top 6 stories that if Catholics had been in charge of the media choices, because you know what they do at the New York Times is essentially gatekeeping. The primary function of the New York Times is to decide what to report and what not to report. There's the old fantasy of all the news that's fit to print, but that has never been true. The job of an editor is to exclude some things, to cut things. And so the choices that the New York Times makes, or that CNN or MSNBC or Fox or anybody of the other news places make, they reflect what those people think are important. And that's rooted in what they value. Well, there's a set of values that comes with being a Catholic. So if we applied the Catholic values to the news stories, some of what gets reported would not get reported, and some of what does not get reported would get reported. And so that's what we're going to cover when we come back from the break. The top 6 stories that would have gotten way more coverage if Catholic values, if Catholic choices were what were governing the media. Number 5 will shock you to your core. Did I do that right, Edgar?
That's perfect.
Is that the proper tease?
Very clickable.
I don't know. We're going to look at what number 5 is. Oh, no, it's not actually going to shock you. Sorry. Right back with the news of the world from a Catholic perspective on Catholic Answers Live.
Why do Catholics pray to dead people, bow to statues, venerate relics? And where do we find any of this stuff in the Bible? In the delightful book, The Saints Pray for You, Dr. Carlo Broussard convincingly defends the ancient Christian belief rooted in Scripture that the saints care for us, that they are allies. Order your copy of The Saints Pray for You today at shop.catholic.com or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
What was the church like in its infancy? In a word, Catholic. And Joe Heschmeyer has the receipts. In his best-selling book, The Early Church Was the Catholic Church, he gives you the details from the historical records of the first 2 centuries of Christianity. Right now, get a copy for just $10, plus free shipping if you live in the continental United States. Get more information and order The Early Church Was the Catholic Church at theearlychurchwascatholic.com.
When the resurrected Jesus appeared to disciples on the road to Emmaus, they didn't recognize him until the breaking of the bread. The same is true today. In the Holy Eucharist, we really meet Jesus. In The Eucharist is Really Jesus, author Joe Heschmeyer explains how knowing Jesus in the Eucharist is the key to understanding all of Christian faith. Order your copy of The Eucharist is Really Jesus today at shop.catholic.com or get it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Throughout history, some Catholics have been among the worst kind of villains, right? Or were they? In Cancelled, historian Steve Weidenkopf digs into the lives and controversies of some of these Catholics whose reputations have been blackened, often unfairly. He takes on the anti-Catholic versions of history and defends not only these figures, but the faith they represent. Order your copy of Cancelled today at shop.catholic.com or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Welcome back, Catholic Answers Live. All right, the top 6 stories during the break have been compacted into the top 5 stories that should have gotten more reporting if the reportage was decided on by Catholics. If a Catholic mindset was choosing the news, it wouldn't be the same as the news you get in the New York Times. That's all we're saying. That's all I'm saying. And so ChatGPT and I had a long discussion about this, and we came up with 6, but I'm going to do 5 because we're going to combine them, and I'll explain that when we get to that one. But number 5, if Catholics ran the news every year, there's a series of TV specials on. I'm so old, I still call them TV specials on CNN about rewarding the heroes of the year, and they all seem like very nice people and fine people and all of that, but they also seem to be doing basically stuff that Catholic nuns are doing every day. Like I feel like, oh, you want to talk about heroes? Let me show you some women religious that you've never met, or some priests or brothers, or I feel like the world acknowledges a certain kind of secular heroism and has no clue about what the church is doing. So number 5, the church's charitable work is massively underreported, and the consequence of that is people don't know about the goodness of the Christian faith because they never get to hear about the witness of Christian people.
That doesn't get clicks, Good,
no, it
positive, charitable work does not get clicks.
But why then does CNN do the Heroes of the Year?
That's only here and there. Come on, let's be honest.
Yeah,
those are only to make you feel good on occasion and in between all the garbage that makes you feel like the world is falling apart.
Yeah, I'm prone to finding anti-Catholic bias under every stone, but I'm not sure how much of it applies here. There's a kind of daily, unremarkable heroism that most of the church is engaged in that doesn't pique us. Something truly extraordinary might be clickable, but the nuns teaching in schools or the soup kitchen or whatever else we're doing, just day in and day out, it's just kind of normal. What's the story there? I guess I would ask. What's the motive? Why with CNN or the New York Times?
No, I don't. That's exactly right. There is no particular motive for that. If I read Catholic media, they will report on the nun who has given her life to prison ministry, or the sisters who help, ransom kids who have been kidnapped in Nigeria, or something like that, or the sisters who keep the church running in Nicaragua amidst the persecution down there. I'm just saying none of that is interesting to the secular media, even though it's every bit as heroic as the stuff that they do report on. That they'll report on the secular person who does the exact same thing, but the sisters won't. The sisters are, and I'd put Catholic nuns up against just about anybody.
How much of the reporting do we actually get from Catholic media about these things?
I see the stuff in there's this sister up in Orange County who, and I'm sorry that I won't remember her name, but they just had a report on her in the Catholic Register the other day, the National Catholic Register, and she got trained as a therapist, and she's got a whole ministry helping teenagers who are alienated and isolated and suffering either mental illness or just mental distress. It's a beautiful thing she's doing, but she's Catholic. She's not going to be on the CNN awards for that. It's the issue everybody knows is the issue of the day, and because she's a Catholic nun and doing more for that than probably just about anybody, she's of interest to the Catholic media, but she's not interested.
How much is ideological bias coming into this? So if there were a nun who were standing up against ICE in a California city, I bet you that story would get some coverage.
Oh yeah, because you're right, that would.
Or the priest who brought the monstrance to one of the camps or one of the holding facilities, that was all over the news.
Yeah, because there's an ideology there that you're trying to make the. And I actually think they were successful at this. It seems to me it's not just a bad look; it's bad policy not to let priests visit people who are in lockup. Yeah. Like, let the priest in. I don't know why they didn't let the priest in. So, but I see what you're saying. The point would be the priest who shows up at the migrant detention center with the Eucharist. That's news because it kind of fits with the ideology of that the media wants to.
Yeah, if there had been a priest on Greta Thunberg's flotilla, or
right, then they would have got attention.
Yeah, in the 80s they were protesting, nuclear proliferation or whatever. I think that got some eyeballs.
All right, item number 4 on news that would have gotten more coverage if Catholics ran the media: the rise of Christianity among young people. This actually did get coverage in places like the Washington Post and the New York Times, but it's a huge story. And if the same number of kids were boys choosing to wear dresses, it would have gotten much more. Again, the ideology.
There you go again, yeah.
But this is big news.
I think we need to be a little more charitable toward the secular media. I have seen a lot of stories just in recent months about rises in baptisms in New York, in France, in England, conversions to Catholicism in particular, rises in doctrinal orthodoxy and conservatism, moral conservatism among the young. I mean, they may be approaching these stories as a kind of weird curiosity more than anything else.
Like they're sociologists or something.
Yes, like they're studying chimps behind glass maybe, but nonetheless they're talking about it.
I think they do. I'm going to take your criticism to heart and say maybe this should have been one of the top, I should have just made this one of the top stories of the year, because there has been reporting on this. Go ahead.
I'm attributing a lot of this to the intercession of Carlo Acutis, because when I started here, and I was tasked with getting young faces, new faces who are out there on social media. This was in 2022. I had a very hard time finding people. And within the last year or two, the surge in Catholic content creators that are actually doing great work, that have a great skill set on editing videos and know how to make things look really good, that has surged. And in order to reach the youth, you have, again, meeting them where they're at and helping elevate them, right? So you meet them in social media, you meet them in TikTok and Instagram and YouTube, and you elevate them out of that to have that encounter with Christ. And I think thanks to Carlo Acutis and the work that everybody's doing in media, especially social media, has helped significantly with bringing young people back into the church.
So that's interesting. I had not thought of his intercession, but praise God for that. That makes perfect sense to me.
I stand really corrected on this, because I thought for sure, Edgar, you're going to say the assassination of Charlie Kirk having a lot to do with this.
That's in part, but we can talk about that later when we get to...
I would like to say one thing. I don't want to steal any thunder, but...
Steal away.
I have there's a young man that I know who's a family friend, and he's a college student now, kind of secularized. He's baptized a Catholic, but he called me not long after Kirk's shooting in tears, and he's a military guy too, so he's a tough young man. And he said, he kind of vented his sorrow about the shooting, but he says, I want to know, I want to buy a Bible.
Wow.
Can you tell me what's a good Bible to buy? And God was working through that event, and he was feeling called to find some of what Charlie evidently had.
You know what? I'll get into it. Charlie Kirk is a massive reason why people are coming back to Christianity.
Is he really?
Oh yeah, I know. I had talked about him before to you guys. I actually met him when he came down to San Diego. He was down at the San Diego State. And I knew he was in town, and I knew he had his criticisms on Catholicism. And I showed up, and I gave him a couple of our books, and I asked him, a softball question on homelessness, because I just wanted to talk to him about Catholicism, and just give him the books and hopefully get in contact with him. But everything that he did, the way he approached it, was all through the foundation of Christ. Everything through the foundation of Christianity. Again, Protestantism, so is kind of varied on different views, but thanks to him and his very public execution and his preaching of certain, American values, which are on top of the foundation of Christianity, made him a martyr on that front.
Well, explain something to me then, because I mean this quite sincerely. I need you to explain this to me because I don't understand it. I was not a person who followed Charlie Kirk. I had heard the name, but I was not familiar with his work, and I don't remember ever having heard him speak. Why? Edgar, this is not a gotcha question. I actually don't know the answer to this. Why is so much of the reporting on Charlie Kirk that he was hateful or divisive or racist? Why is that always associated with his name?
Because he was always willing to ask the tough questions. And any gotcha footage that you have on there of him, so there's quotes of him saying that he wouldn't trust a black pilot or a female pilot, that make it sound like he's either sexist or racist. It's completely out of the context of what he's talking about. He's talking about DEI and them willing to lower the standards on a capability of doing the work properly in order to elevate a specific skin color or a specific gender. Like you have to compromise on something in order. If you want to equal the same amount of men as women as you want for pilots.
But was he pushing people's buttons when he said, it's a shocking thing to say, I wouldn't trust a black pilot.
Yeah.
Like that's a shocking, or a woman pilot. I'm not trying to diminish one over the other.
It is a shocking thing to say, but when you look at it in context, it's actually not that shocking. You take the little soundbite and it sounds horrible, but when you're actually going deep into the reason why he said that.
Was he intentionally pushing people's buttons though? That's what I'm asking.
In some ways, yes, and I would say in other ways, no.
Okay.
So the people that don't actually listen to the things that he said are just taking little snippets here and there are going to try to associate those hateful things about him. but he wasn't. If you sit and actually listen to a couple of those sessions where he's sitting on a chair on campus saying, have a conversation with me, change my mind on this, he's quite reasonable in his approach. And he wanted conversation. He wanted to talk to people who disagreed with him so they can sift through the arguments. And there have been situations where he has either changed his mind or has considered the logic of the person. So the idea that he's just this horrible, hateful person is completely taken out of context with the things that he does. The problem now is you have this person who I think is really embodied the idea of, freedom of thoughts, freedom of ideas, and sifting through them is now the vacuum is being filled with people who tend to lean towards either more violence or actual hateful ideologies that did not.
So people are coming in behind him.
Yeah, people that did not like Charlie, that are starting to fill the vacuum, are there, and I don't know. You look back. There's a clip out there of Charlie, and he's sitting there. He's got an ice hat on, and this lady comes up to him and he says, "Why are you even here?" He's like, "Well, I'm here to talk to people because when we stop talking to each other, we demonize each other, and that's what leads to violence." And that's the thing that he was trying to avoid. So, and the way he died was basically the pushback to his ideology. Somebody that wanted him to stop talking.
Do you think that? Let me ask you this, because I think that you started this conversation, but it seems to me that young people do feel that they're being monitored and that there's certain things that they're not allowed to say. Yep. There's intense social media pressure to not believe things, to not say things. Do you think that whatever Charlie Kirk was, do you think that they saw him as almost like a kind of image of themselves, in that this killing of Charlie Kirk, they feel it as an evil that they've already experienced. It's the same evil, just in a different form, of trying to shut somebody up. And so that maybe pushes them towards a Christianity that is not trying to shut them up. Do you see what I'm saying? Do you see what I'm saying? That there's a kind of, they feel themselves to be crushed under the demands of woke ideology and whatnot. They feel themselves to be crushed under the demands that social media puts on them. And so his killing is, in a certain sense, an image for them of the same evil being manifest in the world.
Well, he was the stand-in for all the students who weren't prepared to go against their professor, who were not prepared, knew that the professor was wrong, but they didn't know how to respond, or feeling the social pressure from their peers. Charlie went in there and he said, "No, this is the truth, and these are the reasons for it." And I just lost my train of thought.
No, I think that may have had something to do with its side, but I think there may be a simpler answer, or that's where I gravitate to anyway. That his death, I'm the witness of his life, but certainly his death catalyzed an increase in interest in the faith among young people, because, well, first he himself said, above all things, and this clip got a lot of play after his death, he wanted to be remembered as someone who stood up for his faith. He wanted to be remembered as a faithful Christian.
Yeah.
And I think he evinced, I was not a big follower like you. I didn't know a lot about him prior to his killing, but he seems to have the earmarks of a happy warrior. Chris Check likes to talk about battle joy in standing up for the truth, and he had a certain rigorousness to his speech and thought, and that's all attractive. And if all of that was connected with believing in God and believing in Jesus Christ, then that's something a lot of his followers and fans are going to want to check out for themselves.
Mark my words, in the next generation, there's going to be a lot of kids named Charlie.
I'm sure.
Yeah. Go ahead. Put it down.
I'm marking it.
All right. A lot of kids in the next generation will be named Charlie.
Lots of Charlies. Okay. I marked it. I'll put the date next to it. All right. Well, you know what? We still have the three biggest stories that I think would have been covered differently if the church ran the media. I don't mean to say the church ran the media, but if it was people with Catholic values running the media. But since you're on Charlie Kirk, a lot of people proposed him for Person of the Year. So I'm going to skip ahead to Person of the Year very, very quickly. Time magazine said the person of the year was the people who developed artificial intelligence. Other people say the person of the year is, in fact, artificial intelligence. A lot of people fussed at Time magazine and said they should have made Charlie Kirk the person of the year. Pope Leo might be put up for person of the year. Donald Trump, because he's always in the middle of the news, you might put him up for person of the year. Who do either of you have an idea of who's the person of the year? Who would you call it for person of the year this year?
I have a 2-for-1. Is that okay? Is that permissible?
Yeah. Oh, of course, yes.
My persons of the year.
Persons of the year
are Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift.
Oh, goodness. Oh, no, really?
Well, I don't know why I didn't have that on my list.
I suffer from as much fatigue about those two people as anybody. I take a backseat to no one. But she got a ring, and she's tremendously influential, and he somewhat less so, but still high profile. And both of them signal to their generation that marriage is still worth doing.
Praise God. That's good. I like it. Who's your person of the year?
I would go with Charlie Kirk. Absolutely. He not only changed the fear in a lot of Americans from speaking up against woke ideologies, but he became a symbol of free speech and freedom across the world. When you see a lot of there's video of protests around the world, people are walking around, they'll wave American flags, and they have images of Charlie Kirk's face. So that to me it shows that the man stood for something. He was a person that people can look to as an example of Christianity and being able to live in a free society.
All right, we'll take a quick break. We'll come right back and we'll do the top 3 stories that should have gotten more coverage this year on Catholic Answers Live.
Hang on. Catholic Answers Live will return in a moment.
In Morse code, the sequence SOS is a distress call. It's been said that it stands for Save Our Souls. Well, right now our world is in big trouble, and we're putting out an SOS call for help. Will you answer that call? St. Paul Street Evangelization, a Catholic nonprofit, has hundreds of teams who share the good news with souls who don't know Jesus. Catholic Answers is supported in part by St. Paul Street Evangelization. Visit streetevangelization.com to get involved.
The wisdom of Mother Angelica.
Don't you feel sometime like there's so many people in the world? How does he hear your prayer? Never think of that, huh? Everybody thinks of that. I'm only a little grain of sand on the seashore. Oh, but that's not true. See, God is God. And you and I have to let God be God. I don't know how he does it. He's God.
For more information on Mother Angelica, visit Religious Catalog at EWTNRC.com.
Welcome back, Catholic Answers Live. I do now regret that I didn't give Todd more time to talk about marriage, but I've only got a few more minutes, and we got to get to the top stories. But you really do believe that this Taylor Swift story is a big deal?
Oh, yes, and I don't want to eat up more time either, but I think that, yes, we're in a marriage crisis right now, especially in that demographic. And Taylor Swift telling her legions of fans, and Travis telling legions of bros that codifying your love in this ancient institution is a good thing.
And if there's a divorce, that's going to be the undoing of that in a very horrible way.
No, come on, man. To go oh my gosh. It's 20. Let's Christmas.
Right.
This is not. We're not doing 2028 right now. We're doing 2025.
All right. Fair point.
All right, write that down.
The next two I'm going to put together. The next two biggest stories that should have gotten more coverage this year: threats to religious freedom and the persecution of the church. When I think of threats to religious freedom, I'm thinking about places like the UK, where we have seen really embarrassing, horrible reporting out of the UK. And then when I think about the persecution of the church, I'm thinking about Nicaragua, Nigeria, Hong Kong, Macau, China, all of China, the Chinese.
Who else?
I'm just so tired of the evil communist dictators. But let's, because I didn't leave very much time for this. I'm never a good clock manager. Any thoughts on either of those things?
Well, that you mentioned England. It's probably the poster boy right now. I think that story of the woman who was arrested for praying silently outside of an abortion clinic.
Yeah.
There's a reason why anarchistic punk rock sprung up in England. There's a kind of authoritarian temptation in that culture for whatever reason. The British cop, what's all this then? Now it's what's all this then? You know, are you moving your lips too close to this abortion clinic?
Right, exactly. Yeah, England not covering itself in glory, or Great Britain not covering itself in glory. I think there is a general feeling in the United States, and Europeans will have to correct this if I'm wrong about this, that Europe is a bossy little nanny state, or that wants to tell everybody what they can think and what they can do, and that when it comes to religion, it's a society of idiots now.
You're gonna land in London Heathrow, and they're gonna be waiting for you as you step off the plane for saying
I'm
that.
not going to London Heathrow that you know of. Shut up! Like, what are you trying to do to me, dude?
Well, it certainly makes you grateful for freedom of speech, however much it may be abused or misused in the United States.
Well, just if we could agree that pornography is not speech, then I think we'd be much better off. But you're right. If we could agree on that basic premise that pornography is not speech, we could really be grateful for our First Amendment. It's been abused.
I think it protects and it safeguards, and it has more good effects than it does ills.
Yeah, it certainly does. All right, so the number one story I would say is not getting the coverage it should, and you're going to be surprised at what I chose, and that proves my point. Euthanasia and assisted suicide. Growing in use, the resistance to it is beginning to crumble because people are weak in the face of media propaganda, and we're in a very, very, very dangerous spot.
I think a lot of people, especially including Catholics, are seeing as the greatest mortal sin as being suffering. And if you suffer, then you just shouldn't be around. And thus euthanasia and assisted suicide is a valuable option if that's considered a quote-unquote mortal sin in their eyes.
Yeah, and there's the fact that we don't want to see you suffering, and we don't want to pay for you while you're suffering.
Yep.
That there's we don't like your suffering, but mostly we don't want to have a society that has to have anything to do with suffering people.
Yeah, the prophets of doom warned decades ago. I'm old enough to remember that too strictly or too closely tying healthcare to the public budget, as it were, opens the door for this sort of thing. And I just saw the headline a few days ago. Canada, where you have this National Health Service type arrangement, had a banner year for euthanasia. Had most mercy
Congratulations,
killings.
Canada.
Yeah, well done. And it seems like a day doesn't go by that you're not hearing a story of someone who has some minor to moderate affliction.
Right.
And they get the pamphlet. Hey, would you like to get injected with something to unalive you? And as if that were an act of mercy. Right. And of course, it's a lot of things. It's financial. It's a detestation of seeing people suffer. It's false mercy, but it's also rooted in a false concept of autonomy, isn't it? There's a glorification of corrupted autonomy.
Yeah, without question, it's almost the apotheosis of that kind of sick autonomy. It does make me think, though, that I think Lord of the World, which is probably 120 years old now, the book, the novel, Lord of the World. Mm-hmm. Do we publish it? I thought
we published our own edition. It's now out of print. Yes.
It's interesting to me how euthanasia in that book is associated with the apocalypse and the end times. I don't think that's excellent. It is apocalyptic. It doesn't necessarily mean apocalyptic in the final absolute sense of history, but it doesn't mean your society is coming to an end.
It's sociologically apocalyptic because it's suicidal.
Yeah, we will literally kill ourselves, and that will, if you. You know what? If you legalize suicide, you get more suicide. If you get more suicide, your society becomes a death cult, and nobody wants to be a death cult. Thanks, Todd Aguilar.
Don't be a death cult. That's the word.
Can we all agree on that? Can we all agree? Don't be a death cult.
Don't be a death cult.
That'll be our final word of 2025. Don't be a death cult. Thank you, Edgar Lujano.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. and did I thank you, Todd Aguilar?
You did, but you can do it again.
Thank you, Todd Aguilar.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Darren. Thank you, Luke. Good night, Moon. That'll do it for us.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Tomorrow we'll
Merry
review
Christmas.
the exact same year, but with two different people. That's right. We'll do it again tomorrow. See you then, God willing, on Catholic Answers Live.